the Les Paul. It's an iconic guitar, first introduced in 1952 as Gibson Guitar's response to Fender's solid body Telecaster. It was Gibson's first solid body, and it was designed by then Gibson president Ted McCarty in collaboration with the man himself, Lester William Pulfus. As with most things, this guitar is available at all different price points and quality levels. So today I'm taking a look at 3 Les Pauls at 3 different price points. First up is this beautiful 2013 Gibson Les Paul Studio. It's available at around $1,100. Next is this gorgeous 1960 Tribute Plus model from Epiphone. This is around $600. And last up is this Monoprice Route 66 imitation Les Paul, and this can be had for a mere $100. So let's start at the bottom and work our way up. I've been buying inexpensive cables at Monoprice for years, and when I saw that they now also carry guitars, I picked one up on sale for 99 bucks. Total impulse buy. It's their Route 66 model in the vintage sunburst finish. It's quite an attractive guitar and fairly well put together, but at around 100 bucks, they've obviously had to cut some corners. If I were building a parts guitar, I wouldn't even be able to buy a reasonable neck for this price, let alone a full guitar. This is clearly a Les Paul clone, but there are significant differences from a typical Les Paul. First, the woods. Traditionally, the Les Paul has a mahogany body with a maple cap and a mahogany neck. This guitar has a solid basswood body with a maple neck and rosewood fretboard. The back and sides are painted black, so the only visible grain is on the top. And it's a nicely matched, if somewhat uninteresting, grain pattern. There's no weight relief in the body, and this guitar weighs in at 9.1 pounds. The top is nicely carved, and the glossy sunburst finish is fairly well done. The body is only slightly modified from the classic Les Paul shape, with a sharper horn, and this odd little angle at the neck joint. The body and neck are fully bound, and the quality of the inlay work is remarkably good, very finely cut, and certainly better than the Epiphone. The neck is bolt-on, which is typical for a cheap guitar, but the Les Paul is known for its glued-in set neck, which is one of the things that contributes to its famous long sustain. It's a standard 24 3/4 inch scale length and 12-inch radius, 1.73 inches wide at the nut, and just under an inch thick. These dimensions are a close match with the USA Gibson 60s slim taper shape. The truss rod works okay, but it's not very smooth to adjust. The frets, they're rather rough, and there's a few high spots, but still, I think this would be a reasonable neck after a level crown and polish. The components are serviceable, but unsurprisingly at this price, not very high quality. The tuners are a bit inconsistent, some stiffer than others, but they appear to hold their tuning okay. The nut is plastic and not quite perfect. It's a little too narrow for the neck, leaving some rough edges here. And the strings are set a little too deep in the slots. The bridge is a cheap Asian tune-o-matic and stop piece. It's got the traditional buzzing screw retainer wire, and the adjustment screws and saddles are stiff and a bit fidgety to intonate. The humbuckers seem reasonable, definitely have a traditional Les Paul sound. The knobs are laid out differently from a standard Les Paul, with the group rotated a bit, and the 2 volumes are on top and the 2 tones are on bottom, unlike the classic Les Paul neck volume and tone on top and bridge volume and tone on bottom. Inside the control cavity, the pots are cheap mini-sized 500K audio taper, and there are a pair of 47 microfarad green polyester tone caps. The wiring is inexpertly done, with several obvious cold solder joints that will be prone to fail. The 3-way switch is plastic, and this one already is a bit glitchy. The bridge pickup sometimes cuts out and buzzes. This guitar comes with a very lightweight gig bag. It's only really sufficient to protect the guitar from scratches. I certainly wouldn't trust it to protect the guitar on the way to a gig. The overall quality on these guitars is a bit hit or miss. I've tried a few Route 66s, and each one has had its issues. This one has an extremely stiff tuner on the high E and the bad 3-way switch I mentioned. Now, Monoprice has a generous return policy, so you can exchange as necessary, but of course, if you're willing to invest some time and money, it shouldn't be too difficult to change out and upgrade the components. Overall, at this price, it seems like a reasonable starting point for a project guitar. Let's plug it in and see how it sounds. I'm playing through my Vox AC15 hand-wired with the cabinet mic'd just off center with a Sennheiser E609. The guitar is plugged into the high gain input of the normal channel with the bright switch engaged, and the channel volume is at about 1/3. The master volume is around 1/4 with no tone cut. I'll start playing clean and then kick on my Vox Ice 9 overdrive. I'll try to play the same riffs on each guitar, always with the pickup volume and tone up full, and I won't touch any of the amp or pedal settings between recordings. In the 1940s, before Les Paul was associated with Gibson, he actually worked in the Epiphone factory. It was there that he designed the Log, one of the first solid-body electric guitars. In fact, when Les Paul approached Gibson in the mid-40s, they rejected his solid-body prototype and only became interested years later after Fender introduced its solid-body Telecaster. These days, the Epiphone brand is owned by Gibson, and the guitars are manufactured in a Gibson-owned factory in Qingdao, China. This here is a 2012 Epiphone Les Paul 1960 Tribute Plus in the Cherry Burst finish. In my opinion, this is a standout in the Epiphone line of Les Pauls. Unlike other Epi Les Pauls, this one has upgraded electronics, including a pair of USA 57 classic pickups, Switchcraft three-way switch, push-pull serial parallel switching, and Mallory tone caps. This body is made of 3 edge-glued pieces of mahogany with a carved maple cap and a vibrant AAA flamed maple veneer on top of that. The finish is a glossy polyurethane, which is tough and durable. Now there's no weight relief here, and this guitar weighs in at around 9.2 pounds. The neck is mahogany with a rosewood fretboard, and it's attached to the body with a deep-set mortise and tenon joint. The nut is imitation bone, as in plastic, but it's reasonably well cut. The truss rod works quite well, and the neck is easy to adjust. The neck shape is Epiphone's 60s slim taper, 1.7 inches wide at the nut, and just under an inch thick, with a 12-inch radius. Surprisingly, the frets arrived polished. There were a few high frets which needed some leveling, but overall, it's a good neck. In addition to the flamed maple veneer, there are some other cosmetic upgrades here. The body and the neck are fully bound, and there are mother-of-pearl trapezoid inlays in the neck, and an inlaid headstock logo. You generally don't get the binding and inlaid headstock in the Gibson line until you're up above $2,000. Unfortunately, the inlay work in the neck is a bit sloppy, with oversized slots for the trapezoids and some black filler around the edges. This doesn't affect playability, of course, but it doesn't look so nice. The tuners are the outstanding Grover locking Rotomatics. They're smooth and solid as a rock. The stock bridge is Epiphone's Locktone Tune-O-Matic and stop tailpiece. I replaced the bridge with a Gotoh 1511, which is a drop-in replacement, and does away with that rattling retainer wire, and has a longer throw for easier intonation. The only other change I made was to replace the Epiphone output jack, which stripped after a few months of use. The nut just wouldn't stay tight anymore. I replaced it with a heavy-duty Switchcraft jack, and at the same time I changed the cream plastic jack plate to a metal plate. The knobs are the standard Les Paul configuration, neck volume and tone on top, and bridge volume and tone on bottom. Additionally, the tone knobs are push-pull and switch between series and parallel on the humbuckers. There's a 57 Classic in the neck and a 57 Classic Plus in the bridge position. These are true Gibson USA pickups, and they sound really rich and dynamic, and they're worth a few $100s on their own, so they add fantastic value to this guitar. Inside the control cavity, the wiring is very clean, no issues at all. The volume pots are Alpha 500K linear taper, while the push-pull tone pots are 500K audio taper. The tone caps are Mallory 0.022 microfarad metallized polyester, and the three-way switch is a massive heavy-duty Switchcraft. The 1960 Tribute Plus comes with the Epiphone hard case. It's solid and will protect your guitar. But the surface coating is prone to tearing and peeling, nothing a little black duct tape can't solve. This Epiphone 1960 Tribute Plus has been my go-to guitar for the last couple of years. It's versatile, roadworthy, and it sounds great. Let's take a listen. This is a 2013 Gibson Les Paul Studio with a vintage sunburst finish. It was made in the Gibson plant in Nashville, Tennessee. The Studio is similar in quality to the higher-end standard, classic, and traditional models, but it lacks some of the cosmetic upgrades like body and neck bindings and figured tops. The headstock is silk-screened rather than inlaid, but otherwise, the guitar should sound and feel just like the higher-end Gibsons, costing 2 or 3 times as much. The body is 2-piece mahogany with a carved maple cap. The top has a nice flowing grain pattern, and the book match is quite seamless. I don't really miss the bindings. The contrasting wood and rich coloring have a nice visual appeal. The body is routed with Gibson's modern weight relief pattern, which reduces the guitar's weight and adds resonance. This one weighs in at just under 8.5 pounds. The finish is a traditional glossy nitrocellulose lacquer. Now this is a more labor-intensive finish, but it supposedly allows the wood to resonate more freely than a thick poly finish. And it'll age more gracefully, like a vintage guitar with some yellowing and possibly some cracking over the years. The neck is a single piece of quarter-sawn mahogany carved in the 60s slim taper profile, with the standard 24 3/4 inch scale, 1.73 inches wide at the nut, and just under an inch thick, and it has a 12-inch radius. It's a set neck with a mortise and tenon joint, and the nut is corian, a type of very dense plastic that's supposed to be similar to bone, and it's cut on the Plek machine for ultimate accuracy. The truss rod feels super smooth when adjusting and works perfectly. The fretboard is granadillo, a Guatemalan hardwood related to rosewood. It's a bit harder than rosewood and has this lovely, rich, reddish-brown color. The trapezoid mother-of-pearl inlays are perfectly cut and have a nice, vibrant coloring, and the frets are perfect, even, and polished. The Kluson Deluxe tuners are solid and smooth and have a vintage vibe about them. The bridge is the Nashville Tune-O-Matic, a very nice bridge with no retainer wire and extended throw for easy intonation. The knobs are, of course, in the standard Les Paul configuration: neck volume and tone on top, bridge volume and tone on bottom. Additionally, the volume knobs are push-pull with coil splitting in the pulled position for single coil sounds. They're reverse wound, so the single coils are hum canceling in the middle position. There's a 490R humbucker in the neck position and a 498T humbucker in the bridge position. These have a little more presence in the mids compared to the 57 Classics. They sound great. Inside the control cavity, the circuit is laid out cleanly and well organized on a simple PCB. The volume pots are 500K linear taper push-pulls, and the tone pots are 500K audio taper, Gibson branded pots. The tone caps are these little orange guys at 0.022 microfarads, and there's also a pair of 0.033 microfarad caps in line with the coil splitting. The three-way switch is heavy duty, but only takes a very light touch to switch. The Les Paul Studio comes with a Gibson hard case made in Canada. It's an excellent heavy-duty case, and the inside smells strangely delicious too. I'm not kidding. This is my brand new guitar. I think it's an incremental step up from the Epiphone. It sounds very similar to the Epi Tribute Plus, but feels a bit nicer in the hands, and at nearly 1 pound less, it certainly should be easier on the shoulder and back during long rehearsals and gigs. Let's plug it in and see how it sounds. Let's hear it for Les Paul. I hope this review has been helpful, and thanks for watching.